Today, my duty is to tell you about a different Eric Molobi. An Eric Molobi who came home as a dad, as a husband, as a grandfather. Most people gathered here know that this has been a very, very long journey. We tried to put this book together before Lele came on board, and to say the least, it was a disaster. But come to think of it, as a family, I don't think we're emotionally ready to take the journey. Besides, I honestly think that my father would not have willingly allowed us to pen his life, as he always said there was nothing special about his journey. When he started chemotherapy, one or two of his colleagues said, Lele, why don't you ask Chairman to be recorded and let him talk about his life? I did. His response was, what is there to write about, madam? And I left it at that. But I also think he was dealing and trying to understand what had befallen him. Cancer took him by total surprise. I'm sure most of you here know. I could tell. He said to me when he stared death in the face, how? I went to gym and tried to live a healthy lifestyle. It was almost like he tried to avoid the reality that the apartheid system and his battle with it was now killing him literally. It looked like he wanted to avoid that. But deep down I knew that he knew that it is apartheid that got him to that position. He would walk around the pool after chemotherapy 20 times, and I'd say, but I'm still strong. Why are the doctors saying I'm stage 4 lung cancer? So this cancer was called adenocarcinoma. Tisetso will correct me if I'm wrong. And he got this cancer from being bitten so much when he was in detention at John Foster Square that he ruptured a lung. But he was so fit. He was actually Eric's age when he went to Robben Island. But he was so fit that he healed. You know, the lung healed naturally. So when he got to Robben Island, that scar later on in life, 2005, 2006, became or caused cancer. Anyway, it was almost, I digress. The real reason why I'm here is to give you a brief glimpse of who Eric Molobi was away from the corridors of business, boardrooms all over the world, and political circles. I'm here to talk about who he was as a husband, father, and grandfather. Basically, who he was at home. Only after his passing did we get to know him, as most of you knew or know him. Literally, on the very day that he passed, we were in awe of this simple man. To quote my sister, what? This guy who drank his Heineken and joked around, calling me all sorts of names? Because the articles and coverage locally and globally, we were shocked. We did not know who this man was. We just knew Papa, who was so goofy and so funny. He adored Mama. They called each other sweet, and he addressed us as Madame. But I'm sure JJ Njeke, Fanny Titi, Roger Jardine at the back there, Khotso Skuman Nkunku, Andile Sangu, your Tabiso, Hilton, people who worked with him closely. They know the other name he used to call other people when they were acting the fool in business. I will not say the word. My parents met in their teens and ended up getting married. They were separated by death on his 59th birthday on that fateful June day in 2006. When he was imprisoned, you pointed out correctly, Prof. My mother worked shifts and overtime to put him through UNISA. He also signed up for tennis, and all he needed, Mama provided. Why would you choose to play tennis when you're a prisoner? I don't know. Because you don't have money. Who's going to pay for this? But Mama didn't hesitate. She also ensured that she saved enough to honor all his visits at the island. So when he was released, he did his best to spend as much time as possible with her. From our first home in Pimville, they would catch the bus to work in the mornings. And in the afternoons, it was beautiful watching them walk from the bus stop to our home. But most times I would see him come back earlier than my mother, because my mother was already working at Wits University after being employed at Drummond's Printers. And he woke up every morning to go look for a job. And he'd come back with nothing. And I'd say, just a newspaper, Papa, no Simba chips, no chips, nothing. And he said, I haven't got a job yet. And I said, but you have to, make it snappy. There's a TV at the opposite house. And there's, programs that we want to watch. My sister and I, Sergeant Samadula, some of you remember that. We want to go watch TV. You better get a job. We need TV. And he said, my baby, be patient. Something will come up. In Diepkloof, our second home, these lovebirds would jog from our home to Nasrec. We lived in Diepkloof Phase 2, those who know Soweto. On weekends, they'd go to gym in Bram, because I think KT offices were already in Bram at the time. At our last home in Observatory, they would go to gym at 5 a.m. But my father then started doing a very annoying thing. He'd knock on my bedroom door as they walked out. But Papa, why do you do that? That's so rude and annoying. I was 17. Madam, I want you to think about how fat you will eventually become if you don't join us. Come on. You have to start now. Well, I go to gym 3 times a week now. I hope he can see that. If he's a fair ancestor, I hope he's proud. So on weekends, they'd go to Old Ads, whilst we were living in Observatory. They'd go to Old Ads, gym, or Virgin Active in Bruma. Bruma Lake, there was a Virgin Active there. But he'd come back, home alone. My sister had and still has a very strong sense of justice. And she took offense. I did too. Why? Why are you coming home alone? Where's Mama? Girls, your mother is talking to everyone at the gym. She greets people and starts conversations when we are supposed to leave. And I get caught in these conversations. So please, go fetch her. We'd get to the gym and Mama would still be talking to people. He loved spending weekends at home. Watching boxing, he was obsessed with boxing. Too obsessed. And I would ask him why. He says, Madam, I often wonder, I watch boxing to see how far can a human push their body. He loved to watch Leon Schuster DVDs over and over again. And he'd call us, Madam, come. And we'd come running with him. Oh, we probably bought a new DVD. We come in. No, it's the old thing. And I said, don't you find this funny? And he said, no, we've seen this 10 times, before. If he wasn't doing that, he was listening to music, or he was in his study quietly reading piles and piles of documents and books. So during these times, quiet times at home, the bell would ring and he'd run to our bedrooms. Shh, tell them I'm not home. Don't tell them I'm... And Dee said so, loved answering the intercom. Hello, he used to suck a thumb. Hello, who's this? Also, it's Uncle so-and-so. Oh, Papa just told us to tell you that he's not home. You can imagine once we opened the door, what would happen. Awkward moments. He'd religiously open grocery cabinets with a pen and notebook in hand, making a list of what he called in Tutse Shotang, meaning the top-up list. He'd get to the shop. He loved Hyperama. And he'd call, sweet, I'm looking at new detergents here. There's a new Omo. I'm going to buy it. And you must please tell me how you like it. I'm bringing it home. If he wasn't doing that, he'd go to malls with my sister for their dose of music and sneaker shopping. In between, he'd buy lotto tickets. He was obsessed with buying lotto tickets. And please, Eric must not kill me. My son buys lotto tickets religiously. And he'd say, "Oh, you're laughing, madam." And odd weekends, he'd call me and say, "Okay, fine, come take your portion of the lotto winnings," because he'd share, equally between my sister and I. And when I go get the money, he said, "Oh, you're laughing now. So is it funny now that you're getting money?" So Martha, my mother, loved church. I think JJ knows that since non-way. So every Sunday, she'd come back home in the afternoon. He'd say, "Martha msadi waka, hey litena mudimu man." Meaning you're giving God a hard time. How do you guys expect this guy to listen to all of you? You pray in unison the whole day. He must be stressed. He said, "I stay home to try and be with you, and you go to church from morning till afternoon. I think I'm going to buy your own church and put it in the backyard." And he'd make fun of my mother, and my mother would call him Tate Muruti. And when my mother spoke to Muruti, "Hey, Antate, hey, Antate Muruti," and he'd say, "Madam, come here." And I'd go and say, "Listen to her. It's almost like she's speaking to God himself." My father was a party animal. Every December holiday, he'd get envelopes and put cash in them and drive to Hilbron, Sebokeng, Palm Springs, Vereeniging, Mabopane, Soweto, delivering these envelopes of cash to family members as Christmas gifts and inviting them to our observatory home for the mother of all Christmas parties. And this happened for many, many years. When our sons were born, his life took a very different, beautiful direction. It was a marvel to watch. On the day Eric Jr. was born, we are told he was so excited. He called friends and colleagues that he was now a grandfather. He asked my husband to kindly let him name our son after him, and he had no sons. Fortunately, my husband agreed, and he was forever grateful for that. Homolimo, our second born, kept him on his toes. He spoke non-stop, still does. The boys changed his shopping habits from four-wheeler, bikes, TV games, and books, but he also loved observing them. So there's something that I never forget. There's a movie called Stuart Little that Eric used to like watching when he was about 7, 8. And there's a part where this mouse would get lost and Eric would cry. My child would cry a river. And he'd say, "Madam, come see. Can you see? He's going to be a very well-rounded human being. He has emotion. He's going to be a good guy." And never ever tell him not to cry, because that's a good thing. Let him cry. He has compassion. And he'd cry simply because this mouse got lost and couldn't find his way home. He loved saying that he could not wait to see them as teenagers and on their graduation days. His dream was to see them as adults and how they would turn out. It was his wish. Sadly, it was not to be. What is more sad is that he never lived long enough to see his granddaughters, Mosadi and Basani. And I know Basani would give him a hard time. All his grandchildren will never get to see and experience his hard work and kindness in action, especially in the world of business. In conclusion, I'm happy to let them carry this in their hearts forever, that their grandfather, Eric Marooi Molobi, had a gift of seeing people fully, not only for who they were, but for the infinite possibilities of who they could become. May he continue to rest in perfect peace, and thank you for keeping his memory and legacy alive. We are deeply, deeply thankful, and this is appreciated. Thank you.